Have you ever felt like your chronic hives are something you have to live with? Like poor sleep, skipping the gym, or changing what you wear is just part of your life now? That's called normalizing your symptoms, and it might be holding you back from getting better care. In today's episode, we talk about when to recognize when your hives are not actually under control and how to make the most out of your next doctor's appointment. I'm Kortney, bringing you the patient perspective, joined by my co-host Dr. Payel Gupta, a board-certified allergist and immunologist. Our guest today is Dr. Tom Chacko. This podcast is made in partnership with the Allergy and Asthma Network. We want to thank Novartis for sponsoring today's episode. While they support the show, all opinions are our own and sponsorship doesn't influence our content or editorial decisions. Any mentions of brands is for informational purposes only and not an endorsement. Now, let's get to it. You're listening to The Itch, a podcast exploring all things allergy, asthma, and immunology.
So today we have a friend, Dr. Tom Chacko. Tom, would you introduce yourself?
So I'm Tom Chacko. I'm an allergist in the Atlanta area. I've been practicing in the area for about 10 or 15 years. I see kids, adults, really all things allergy-wise. I see asthma, hives, food allergies. We have a pretty big practice here in the Atlanta area. We have about 8 to 10 locations. I have 3 or 4 younger docs with me. I'm happy to be here.
Great. And Tom, I also know that you provide a lot of education on social media, so we'll definitely link to your profile there. But today, what we're going to be talking about is chronic spontaneous urticaria and how patients should know if their symptoms are controlled or not and what that means. So could we start with a basic definition of what chronic spontaneous urticaria is?
Urticaria is a fancy way of saying hives, really itchy red welts that come up, make you kind of crazy. It itches all over. Chronic by definition is 6 weeks or more, and spontaneous meaning comes out of nowhere. So chronic spontaneous urticaria, itchy red welts come out of nowhere, lasting more than 6 weeks.
And what about the swelling component to CSU? I know that some patients also experience that.
Yeah, brilliant question. So about a third of patients will have what we call as angioedema. Angioedema is swelling, lip swelling, eyelid swelling. I sometimes say it doesn't look like bad Botox or you got punched in the face because I warned them because that can happen. It's about a third that you see them. So I want to warn them that that might be there. Or even if it might be there, they might come already having that as well.
Great. So now that we have a basic definition, the main word for today's episode is normalize. So we don't want patients to normalize their symptoms. And what do we mean by normalizing? What we mean is that when you have a chronic condition, oftentimes what happens is that patients deal with symptoms more often than they should. And so with CSU, what do you tell your patients as far as how often, if they're on the right treatment, should they be having hives?
So if you come to me with CSU or chronic urticaria and you're uncomfortable, you're not sleeping, you're not going to work, you're not doing what you want to do with your kids, if it's messing up your day, let me know and let me fix it. Because as I mentioned earlier, I've been doing this for 10 years plus, and we didn't have what we had 10 years to now. And so we have some game-changing options that are there. If you're not sleeping well, you're uncomfortable, you're not doing things you want to do, you're nervous about it, let us work with you to get you better.
So what I'm hearing is you want to say things that are disrupting your day, but what Dr. G was saying is this normalizing idea. And from my experience, not with hives, but with other chronic conditions, I didn't realize that that was something that was a problem, right? Like I didn't realize that waking up every night was a problem because I had been living with it for so long that was normal. It was my thing. I just didn't sleep well. It was a thing I had dealt with for so long that to me, I didn't know it until someone else was like, that's weird. You do that every night? Or, it took someone else to tell me that what was happening wasn't normal. And so I hear that and it makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't necessarily translate into a patient's everyday. So is there anything concrete that they could be doing to know that that's not normal other than having a friend being like, dude, that's not okay?
You could always track your symptoms. One, there's things you could write down, bring it up, or track, are you sleeping well? Track how often are you having hives? And definitely how often are you having angioedema? Track, is it affecting your daily life? If you're living your best life and you're doing fine, then we're okay. But if you are objectively not doing well, meaning it's changing what you would like to do, it's changing how you would go out, how you sleep, how you wake up, then track that to let your doctor know, because that's not good. And we have options to try to help with that.
So, Tom, you brought up a really good point. So, you said that if they're not doing the things that they want to do, if they're not feeling the way that they want to feel, can you talk a little bit about how we know CSU impacts people's quality of life?
CSU could be a big player. Actually, that's probably the one that I get the most calls from when people are miserable. Asthma, allergic rhinitis, they could deal with that. When their hives are bad, they are miserable. They're itchy. They can't go out. They're uncomfortable. They look unusual, especially if they have swelling. So these are ones that I get the calls for on the weekends or after hours because it's something that typically can't wait. They might not be sleeping well. They're worried about what caused this. Like a lot of them are worried about other sequelae. Like, is this a sign of something else more dangerous? And so we see that a lot. And sometimes they think, what did I do? What am I doing to make this occur? But almost by definition, if it's going on for more than 6 to 8 weeks, it's usually spontaneous.
So, what I'm hearing is that spontaneous aspect is really a big part of living with it that's challenging for patients because they're getting these hives and this swelling and they don't know why. They don't know when it's going to come. So, it feels like living with this unpredictable beast that might pop up on you anytime. And that's the most distressing part of it is that they're worried, when is it going to happen? Why is it going to happen? Is it something I've done? Is it going to be something worse? So, are the hives just the start of something worse? So, living with this condition can feel very stressful because it can be very disruptive to your daily life. And when you are having flares, it is very disruptive. It's very itchy. You can't sleep. You can't go out. I've heard of people living in cold showers or having ice packs on them all the time and, changing their wardrobe because they're afraid they're going to be itchy all the time. So, it really does have a strange impact that if you don't live with this chronic condition, you wouldn't think like, why do you always have 20 ice packs in your freezer ready to go? Or why do you wear all that strange cotton clothes? Well, because that's what they're doing to feel better, right? And like you said, it's unpredictable at sometimes. And as a patient, sometimes we blame ourselves and these patients are blaming themselves, but they don't know why. So that's what I'm hearing is their impact of quality of life.
And the other thing, Courtney, it's important to know is they were totally fine. Like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, it kind of came out of nowhere. They're like, nothing new happened. And now I'm getting it. So, they're 20, 30-year-old male or female living their best life. And now they're just getting these crazy itchy hives and swelling out of nowhere. So it's not something like it built up or anything. It kind of comes out of nowhere. And so that's also, I think, stressful because they don't know why it occurred.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of episodes on the spontaneous nature of CSU and how this is not related to an allergen. It's not something that you're eating, it's not something that you're exposed to. It's really an internal process that's causing these hives to appear. And so I think that once we've cleared that up for the patient, that they understand, that it's not something that they're doing, it's not something that they're eating, but that this is an internal chronic condition that is resulting in these hives and the angioedema, then it's really the next step in their treatment is to understand how controlled they can be and what does control look like. And does that mean no hives ever? Or does that mean that they can sometimes still have hives? So that's really the question. And now, with the treatment options that we have available, as you mentioned, Tom, there are so many more treatment options now than there were. So the therapies that are available are changing continuously, thankfully, right? If you've listened to this podcast, that I love having multiple options for my patients. So, really, how do you have that conversation with your patients? Are you telling them that our ideal goal is no hives and no swelling? Or are we saying 50% improvement? What are your personal parameters? And I think if we asked 20 allergists, we would probably get 20 different responses. But I'm curious for you, Tom, what is your message to your patients?
I agree 100% with what you're saying, especially how the landscape has changed. When I first started practicing, no one liked taking care of hives because we didn't really have options, and it'd be like, oh, hives patient. Ah. Not in a bad way. We just couldn't get them better, and now we're like, I got you. We got so many options. And I would say with 90% certainty, you are going to be better. We just got to figure out which one we want to do. And so that being said, when they come to me and you say, hey, Tom, what's your game plan? I like objective numbers. I say, give me a score from 0 to 10, 10 being perfect, 0 being miserable. Where are you at with your hives and your swelling? If they're like 80, 90% better. And I'm like, are you good? And they tell me, yeah, I'm 90%, 80, 90% with what they're doing. I'm like, I don't know if we need to rock the boat. But if they give me 80% or lower, I'm like, look, we have a lot of options, And I talk to them about them and see, hey, do we want to try some of them?
So you said you like objective numbers, and if it's 80% or lower, then you want to have that conversation with your patient. Well, what can you do differently? How do you help them define what that 80% or lower would look like?
Are you sleeping okay? Are you changing things that you like to do? Are you going out with your kids? Are you going to the gym? That's a big one because a lot of my patients, their hives get worse in the gym, and so they stop exercising. And Paul, you guys know going to the gym's huge, right? There's so many sequelae, both physical and mental, when you don't do this. There's no way I'm going to tell you not to go to the gym if that's what you want to do because there's so many other things. So, but you might say, hey, I stopped going to the gym. I stopped at running because I broke out in hives. That's not uncommon. I have some people that have changed their shower routine because they can't take certain showers. So my point is, if I'm hearing that, I'm like, hey, we got to step up our game and get you something better.
Follow up is really important, right? And what we hear from our patients and the way that we ask our patients how they're doing can also really change their response, right? So if we just say, are you better? They may just give us a plain yes or no answer. So what I'm hearing from you, Tom, is as doctors, we can't just say, are you better or worse? Because hopefully patients are better because they've initiated a different form of therapy. But really, what we want to know are the details. So, are you sleeping okay? Are you doing the things that you want to do? Are you feeling comfortable? And are you avoiding things? And if any of those questions are a yes, that means that we can do better, right? And that's what I'm hearing from you is we need to be asking the right questions in order to help our patients understand that we don't want them to normalize their symptoms, right? And so what that looks like is making sure that we're asking all of these questions and not just, are you feeling better?
Agreed. Making sure they're not making this a normal part of their life. And we, again, if so, we can do better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people tend to adjust their life for their chronic condition. And in this situation, the message that we want to give is that we would rather you not adjust your life and that you live your fullest life because we're at this position where, because we have so many options, if one of them is not working, we can switch to another.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you've got your diagnosis and now you've got your treatment plan that you've made with your doctor. And you're going into the real world and you're seeing if that treatment is working for you, right? And you're going to do your follow up appointment. And so, what I'm talking about right now is kind of what you're going to do at that follow up appointment and how you're going to have that conversation. And you want to have a concrete conversation with your doctor. You don't want to just be like, yeah, I'm feeling better, or no, I'm feeling the same. You want to give evidence as to how it is impacting your life. And if you are continuing to normalize your symptoms, right? Are you still not sleeping well, or are you sleeping better? Do you still have to wear special clothes, or can you wear the clothes that you wore before these hives showed up in your life? Can you put those things back on? Can you go back to the gym? Or are you still avoiding the gym? These are concrete examples that you can talk to your doctor about that will help you decide whether what you're doing is good or whether you need to modify that treatment plan. And I know personally, not with hives, but when I started a certain medication, I realized I got things back in my life that I didn't realize were gone, right? I was normalizing things and I was avoiding things, and I got a lot back in my life. And I was able to say, hey, you know what? I actually can do X, Y, and Z now because I didn't realize I was actually avoiding it. And I normalized avoiding that activity. So I think that's something that you want to think about is not only how you're doing and how you're modifying your life, but has something surprising happened? And that's a conversation you want to have with your doctor instead of just yes or no. Because if you're giving them a little bit of information, they don't really know the full picture. And like Dr. G and Dr. Chacko have said, there's so many options for you that if it's not changing, you can change what you're doing, right?
And I think that a big part of this is just there's two things. One is the normalization aspect, which I hope people now understand what we're talking about, which is when people have a chronic condition, they tend to think that they have to live in a certain way. And what we're trying to say is that with CSU and conditions where we have good treatment options, we don't want you to adjust your life for your chronic condition. And we're hoping that your treatment should basically allow you to live your normal life. And number two, we just want you to have those honest conversations with your doctor because unless you let us know how you're doing, we really can't change treatment options or help you feel better. So if you're not following up with your doctor and you're just kind of continuing on and dealing with your condition, then we really can't help you, right? And so those follow up appointments are important. The conversations that we have during those follow up appointments are important.
When should a patient schedule follow up after they've decided what treatment they're taking? So they've had the appointment, they've gotten their treatment. When should they schedule their next follow up appointment? And how often should they do follow up after?
So I think that that could vary from provider to provider. And usually we have that conversation before you leave the appointment. But for me, and Tom, you can chime in too, I usually like to see patients 4 to 6 weeks after starting them on a new therapy, just to touch in to see how things are going. Are they able to take the medication? Are they experiencing any side effects? Are they feeling better? Are they not feeling better? So we can kind of touch in and just do a quick check at that point. And then if things are going well, then after that, I might say, let's touch back in 3 to 6 months and then potentially yearly. But I would say every 6 months, even after that, just to make sure that we're on the right track and that we want to continue the treatment, that we want to try to reduce the therapy in any way or increase the therapy in any way. So for me, those are kind of the check in points.
And Paul, I'd agree with you in that I would say 4 to 6 weeks. My only thing I might do with these newer therapies, they work so quick that I might even bring them back in 2 or 3 weeks just to see. And you generally know pretty quickly on these if it's worked or not, which is great because these guys have been suffering for months and months. And I give them this new medicine. Often in our private practice, we have samples too. So I'll give them a sample. I'll know within a week or two, some of these medicines within a few days if it works. So that's the benefit, at least of some of the newer medicines, that their efficacy is pretty quick.
Great. And I mean, I personally would do these follow ups through telemedicine. And so you don't necessarily have to come in for that visit in this condition. And I know how busy life can get with our work, with our family, and with everything that we have going on. And so, Tom, for people that just feel like they can't even remember what happened to them yesterday, let alone for the last like 2, 3 weeks, are there any objective measures that you sometimes use to help those patients really understand if their hives are under control or not?
So we do have some objective scoring systems. One is called the Urticaria Activity Score, or UAS 7, where basically it helps you quantify your hives and your itchiness over a week, and it gives you an objective number, 0 to 42. And so that's another objective way to see how you're doing. And depending on where you stand on that score, we could decide, do we need to change our treatment plan or not?
Yes, and we talked about this in the last episode. They did use the UAS 7 during that clinical study, and it's a nice way for everyone to know, is the treatment working or not. So sometimes we'll have that number from the first week of starting therapy, and then we can redo that for another 7 days later. So after maybe being on the treatment for a month or 2 months, we can see, is that score different from the beginning to 2 months of being on the treatment. And that's a nice way of what we call objectively seeing if a treatment is working or not. And that means that it's not just how you're feeling, but it's based on a score.
Thank you, Dr. G. So basically, they can take this UAS 7 score, and I think you can find that online. So we can link to that. But what about other things like trackable devices? So we've talked a lot about sleep. Is that something that you would ask your patient about? Is like if you wear a smartwatch or something like that, would you bring that up in an appointment and say, hey, how's your sleep? Let's look at it objectively. Are there other tools that you find helpful or not? Because I know that your time with patients is very limited. So I'm thinking as a patient, how much information can I bring you? And actually, what is important and what is going to be useful for this follow up appointment?
Yeah, so Courtney, you mentioned trackable devices because my wife literally just bought me the Aura to check my sleep for Christmas. So I've been checking my sleep because sleep is very important. As we're getting older, I think that's something that people minimize, right? People worry about how they eat, maybe their exercise, but sleep is a factor that no one talks about. So it's funny that you mentioned the sleep and trackable device because I'm just getting into it now. And that's true. That's a great way to do it. To say, hey, check your sleep, if you have a trackable device, what you said is right. Let's get some objective data because it'll tell you, are you up? Are you moving? Are you scratching? I could almost guarantee you get bad sleep, your day is going to be rough. Let us make sure to get you so your day is not rough. Let us make sure we treat you. We know some of the stuff that you might not be telling us because you didn't realize. And so then we could objectively get things that are bothering you and try to make that better.
Yeah, and I think that now with so much data available, it is a struggle to figure out what's helpful and what's not. But absolutely, now that we have all this data, but now we also have artificial intelligence or AI to help us understand what the data means in certain contexts, I think we're going to be in a place where that data is going to be more manageable for doctors and for patients. And what I mean by that is what you said, Kortney, is very true. We don't have that much time in an appointment. And so you can't sit there with your doctor and go through every single day of your sleep data for the last month to see what's the trend here. We can't do that, unfortunately. But if we have a clear way of saying over the last month, this is what's been happening to your sleep, then that's a great objective measure that we can quickly look at, right? But it's all about being able to see the trends. Are things getting better or are they getting worse? That's really the goal. And so if you're using a trackable device, and not everyone has the ability to do that, but if you are in that group of people that's using an Aura ring or your iWatch or whatever, all these devices, then that's great. And we may have like another piece of objective evidence. But for people who don't have those devices, that's what things like the UAS7 allow us to do, is kind of track those things in a more objective way. So I don't want people to feel like they need those devices, but they can be helpful in just giving us the ability as busy people to see things are getting better or things are getting worse. And also, you can ask the people around you. So it sounds like you have a really lovely person in your life, Tom, that cares about you. And she is making sure that you have a way of seeing if your sleep is good or not good. And so the people around us can tell us too. They can tell us, you know what, you're sleeping better, or you're not sleeping that great. And so I would say that before your appointments, another good thing to do is check in with the people that are around you and say, hey, do you feel like I've been better lately? Or is there anything that you think that I need to talk to my doctor about? Is there anything that you've noticed that you're worried about? Because I'm about to go and see my doctor for my visit. And so I'm just asking for more information that maybe I haven't noticed. Because when we normalize our symptoms, we don't realize, but other people realize, right? And so checking in with your loved ones and asking them about objective data is also really helpful.
I love that. I love that so much, Dr. G, to talk to the people around you because that's how I realized I was normalizing things, right? It was when someone was saying, you're doing something very strange. Why are you doing that? And I was like, well, that's totally normal for me. And they're like, well, I don't know. Maybe you should talk to a doctor about that. So sometimes it does take a push for patients to actually say, oh, okay. And you're like, oh, I don't want to go to the doctor, blah, blah. But really, like, it's time for you to go to the doctor. And sometimes we need that little kick in the pants from a loved one to say, it really is. You need to get your act together. And then they're the ones who can also help you see whether it's working, whether it's not working. Because, like you said, sometimes when you're living with a chronic disease, you can get in your head and you can convince yourself that you're feeling better. But sometimes you need other people to say yes or no to how you're feeling. For a patient who's preparing for their follow-up appointment, who wants to get the most out of it, but has like 1,000 questions or knows that in the past with their doctor, they haven't been able to get to everything they want to, or they've listened to this podcast and their doctor has never once asked them how their sleep is, how do they start that conversation with their doctor to make sure that they're feeling like they're being heard and that they are getting the best treatment options offered to them?
I think it's a very relevant question. It happens to me routinely. We run a busy practice, we see a lot of patients, but we never wanted the intention that we didn't answer the patient's question. I genuinely feel bad about that. Even though we're fast, we're a busy private practice. We are that doctor that you may feel like you couldn't get your questions answered, and that's never our intention. But if you come in with those questions up front and then say, hey, I could weave those questions into our conversation. But if you don't have that for me, I didn't know I didn't answer them. So I think that's the biggest advice is come prepared, come with your questions. That's reasonable. It's totally good. But give it to the doctor, maybe even in the beginning, and they could answer that and even still do it efficiently. But within the appointment, we could try to help answer that so you leave at least making sure that your questions are answered.
So if a patient comes in and at their follow-up appointment and they do not feel like they're necessarily getting better on the treatment, is it really important for them to ask, is there another option for me?
Of course, 100%. They should ask. And hopefully, we would also, as physicians, bring that up as well, that they're not doing well. Because I would hate to be like, I'm not doing well. And well, yep, you're out of luck. Not in this world. Not now. Not in 2026. Not with Hives. Maybe in 2007, but not now. We have so many options to talk about that hopefully we could talk and you're not out of luck and we have options we could discuss.
And I think I've talked about this before with friends that with our CSU patients, it's really important to even let them know at the first visit that there are options, because I think that that also helps patients not normalize and also helps them have hope and also helps them come back for that follow-up appointment sooner if things aren't going the way that they should be going. But I think if we don't help them understand that, hey, we're starting with this treatment option, but if it doesn't work, then we have this that we can try if this isn't the right treatment option for you. So I think that having that conversation earlier with our patients really helps them have hope and also helps them understand that they shouldn't just live with their condition.
So, what I'm hearing is that with CSU patients, because you have so many options now, the follow up appointment is really, really important because you want to see whether it's working and if it's not, what you can do to change it, right? So, what I think I've taken away from this episode is that you want to book your follow up appointment. You want to make sure you go to that follow up appointment and you want to make sure that you're prepared for it, right? And once you're prepared for it, when you enter the office, you say, here are my questions. This is what I'd like to address today. And your doctor will hear that and they will work with you in that short appointment that you have to try and address everything they can at that time. But at least as a patient, when you've gone, here's the research I brought with me about my own self, and here's how I'm feeling. Can we talk about that? You feel like you've at least, started that discussion with your doctor right from the get-go, and hopefully you won't feel frustrated by that appointment and that you will have most of the answers you were hoping to get.
And as a summary of the things that would be helpful for us as doctors to know, as far as the information that we need that's helpful, is one of the primary things that we notice with patients in CSU is sleep, as Dr. Chacko mentioned. And so making sure you let us know that, yes, I'm sleeping well, or no, I'm not sleeping well. And one of the things that's helpful to objectify that, if you have people around you or if you sleep with somebody else in your bed, is to find out from the person that you sleep next to, hey, am I sleeping better since I've started this medication or not? That will be helpful. Number two is you don't have to do the UAS 7, but if you want to, that would be a helpful tool to use if you need something that's more objective. It's really easy. We will link it to this episode, but that's something that you will track ideally in the beginning of your treatment cycle and then closer to the follow-up appointment to see if there's a change from the beginning to when you come in again. So that's one thing that can be helpful. And then also being honest about whether or not you've been able to take the medication regularly or not, because that is also something that will help us really determine, is this treatment not helping because you're not taking it? Or is this treatment not helping because you're really being consistent and it's truly not the right medication for you? So those are all really important, helpful things that we need to hear at that follow-up appointment in order for us to help you feel better.
And Pyle, I want to add on to that one other thing. You were saying, are they taking the medications? And let's say they are, but what if you're taking 2 to 4 cetirizines or Zyrtex and it's working, but you're sedated on that, you're sleepy on that, because that's giving you side effects. There are other options because you can take the higher dose antihistamines and they may work, but then you may have side effects of them. So we could have that conversation about other options if you're not tolerating your current medications.
What I'm hearing is that we also have to talk about the medication, right? So your follow up should be about what we've talked about, tracking your quality of life, but it should also be about how is this medication fitting into your life? Are you able to take it as prescribed, or is there something that's blocking that? And are you taking it, but now you're feeling really tired because you're taking antihistamines and you're feeling slightly sedated? And that's impacting something else in your life. So that conversation also needs to happen at this follow-up appointment is, are you taking the medication and how does it feel to take the medication other than the hives and the angioedema or the swelling? So thank you for bringing that up. I think that's really important, especially when you've never really taken medication before and now all of a sudden you have to take medication and sometimes it's not easy to remember. And that's a conversation you can have with your doctor as well as how do you make sure that you are incorporating that into your daily life?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, Tom, because a medication is not going to be helpful if it's causing too many side effects or if it just doesn't work with your lifestyle. So I think it's just really important to remember to talk to us about how you're feeling on that medication and to watch out for side effects. And usually we try to tell you what the side effects will be on any given medication. But if you're feeling anything new, since starting the medication, we also need to hear about that so that we can also make sure that we're keeping you safe and that you're not having side effects from a medication that we've started you on. Because again, if we don't know what you're feeling, we can't help you understand that it may be related to your new medication.
Thank you so much. This episode has been really, really interesting. As a patient with a chronic illness, I feel like there's a lot of stuff I could relate to, even if I don't have hives. So thank you so much. Before we sign off, Dr. Chacko, is there anything else you feel like CSU patients should know?
I want to let you know that there's options out there. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to feel uncomfortable. I feel like you come to me with hives, we got you. We got you good. We just got to talk about what we need. Don't let yourself suffer and bring it up with your doc.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Remember that all information you hear today is for informational purposes only and are not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, and/or medical treatment of a qualified physician or healthcare provider. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. And if you have a second, help spread the word by rating our podcast and sharing with your friends and family who might also be interested in learning more about allergies, asthma, and immunology. You can always stay up to date by checking out our Instagram, The Itch Podcast, where you can leave questions you are itching to know, or check out our website, which is www.itchpodcast.com, which contains more information about the subjects we covered in today's episode and every episode. Until next time, have a fabulous week.